Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it's time to listen to the magic once again. And what is that sound, that old Britishy sort of Sherlock Holmesy sound? It's the Throne of Eldraine, the fairy tale noises.
Yeah, we're going back, pulling the swords from the stones, doing all the whatever, the fairy tales, Beauty and the Beast, all the Disney knockoffs. We're back.
We got Pied Pipers. We've got knights doing knight things.
Yeah, we got the mysterious lady in the lake giving away the swords.
We got the Loch Ness Monster. We got all sorts of stuff. And we're going to discuss it today. One of the most powerful sets that's been released in recent memory, and I can't think of anyone better to help me discuss all of this stuff than our local Magic expert, soon-to-be two-time Pro Tour participant, Kyle Moran. Hello.
Hey, Gino. How's it going?
Good. So this is the standard you're going to have to deal with, huh?
Oh, yeah. No, there's a lot going on here. I'm excited, but I'm a little nervous at the same time, so best diving in as soon as possible. But it's kind of crazy how you touched on the set being like the strongest, and I'm just like, I feel like that just might be the norm for now on. Just like with War of the Spark, then M20, now this.
Yeah,
just
the last three sets have all been relatively broken, and that's not to say that the Ravnica sets were weak. They were just normal strong sets. War, M20, and Eldraine feel like, well, they break things in fundamental ways. The Planeswalkers in War of the Spark all were broken, almost without exception, in some way. Almost all of them were broken.
Yeah, when an uncommon one sees play in Vintage, you're like,
Yeah, and when a rare one sees play in all formats and needs to be restricted in Vintage, it's not a good look. And then M20 introduced another just swath of broken cards that have taken over other formats, like Lotus Field, which we highlighted, I think, in the podcast. That card was dangerous.
Yeah, I didn't know where to see it, but I guess Arcane Spells plus Twiddle was the way to go.
Yep, Twiddle Storm. It's lands that generate more than one mana, always dangerous. And that's going to be a recurring theme, I think, in this set as well. Things that generate more than one mana for very cheap, or that are free, always a problem.
Yeah, we got a few lands this time around, a very low opportunity cost, like really, really, really low. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah, but before we dive into Throne of Eldraine, Kyle, how have you been doing? How has your Magic career been going? You've qualified for another Pro Tour, but how has the competitive scene been?
Yeah, I can't complain. Like over here in Boston, the competition's always great. I got, great network of people. We go all around. Went to Danbury last time playing an IQ because one of the guy I went to the Invitational last time, and while I didn't do very well, one of my testing buddies I go with almost all the tournaments with nowadays, he actually came in second in the Invitational.
In the Star City.
Yeah, in the Star City Games Invitational, Kevin Thanek, if you look up the name or whatever. But so he's been kind of pushing me to try and qualify for the Invitational myself. So that's kind of been my focus for the last couple of months and forward too, because I'm going to Philadelphia in about a week. And they just announced it's also an MCQ now, or a Players Tour qualifier, I guess. So that's pretty cool. Can't hate on that. Get double the value. But yeah, so I can't complain. But right now this is kind of like, I have to prove my mettle again. I went 1-5 in Kyoto, but I think I'm a lot better now. So hopefully I can run it back and do a lot better.
Yeah, and hopefully this time you'll have more testing with people of higher caliber. You won't be seduced by your black-blue reanimator instincts.
If I got to play mono red, I'm playing mono red. I learned that lesson. When they give you Ramunap Ruins, play Ramunap Ruins.
Yeah, until they ban it.
Yeah, until they ban it. Play the cards that get banned before they get banned, not after they get banned.
Exactly. So just keep playing Teferi. It's fine.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, Teferi's pretty good. Narset's still pretty good. Sure, there's something there. Like, sure, Teferi Hero's gone, but, we'll figure it out.
Exactly. So, let's discuss Throne of Eldraine. It is, as we said, a fairy tale themed set. So, think knockoffs of every fairy tale you've ever heard. There's probably a card for it. We've got a Gilded Goose that lays golden eggs. We've got multiple Jack and the Beanstalk cards. We've got a Goldilocks, all sorts of stuff. So, if it's been in a Disney movie, or if you can think that, you've read a Grimm fairy tale or two, they all are pretty much here. The new mechanics of the set are Adamant. Kyle, what does Adamant do?
So Adamant's basically kind of prepping us up for when we go back to Theros next set, or Theros Beyond Death. So a spell
They announced Theros?
Yes, Theros Beyond Death is the next set.
Okay.
So we're only sticking with Eldraine for one more block for this set, and then we're moving over to Theros. So it's prepping, massaging us into Theros, so any spell with Adamant has an effect where it does something that's like fine, but if you spend 3 mana of the color of the spell, which all Adamant cards are monocolored, thankfully, for simplicity's sake. So if you spend 3 or more mana of the color of the spell on that spell, it does a little bit more. So like the best example is like Turn to Pumpkin. So it's 3 and a blue, you bounce a non-land permanent, draw a card. That it'll always do that no matter what you spend the mana, as long as you put the 1 blue in. But if you play 3 blue into its cost, instead of just the 1, you also create a food token, which I'm sure we're going to get to later for breaking down the mechanics.
Yes. So the second mechanic, we can go over food tokens. Food tokens are a new thing. What are
they are.
Tokens?
Yep. So if you know clues, they are very similar to clues, except so they're an artifact token. They basically do nothing until you pay 2 mana, and you can sacrifice them for 3 life instead of a card. So pretty simple, but a lot of fun little play you can do with them.
Yeah, and unlike our clues, where clues were mostly used as just card draw and value, there weren't too many cards that cared about how many clues you had or let you sacrifice clues to do things. In this set, there's a lot of things that key off of food.
Yeah,
I'd
agree.
Food or use food as ammunition for things, or care about the number of artifacts in play, which implicitly means it cares about food.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that, because there were things back in Shadows that like wanted you to play around and investigate, but they were all really bad. These ones are actually the thing of the food cards, they're quite good, which makes sense, right? Because clue tokens are inherently more powerful than food tokens, so the cards that make food can be better than the cards that make clues.
Yeah. Yeah, so instead of just giving you a lot of card advantage, and then occasionally you will sack the clues to do other things, this set, it's really pushing you to make food, and occasionally you will use that to buffer your life total, but most of the time you're just going to be using them to power other synergies.
Yeah, totally. Because like with clues, if you make a bunch of them, then you crack them for the cards. That's awesome. Like you got lots of advantage. But if you crack all your food for like 12 life, and it's like, I don't know.
You time walk them.
Yeah, kinda, sorta.
Look, don't.
That's why the synergies have to be better, though. That's my only point there.
Yeah,
the synergies.
Totally. The tokens themselves are much less useful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the biggest, flashiest new mechanic of the set, and honestly, there's a lot more of it than I thought there would be, is Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
What does Adventure do? What do creatures that have the keyword Adventure do?
Yeah. So when I first read this, mechanic, I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I messed this mechanic up. I assumed how the mechanic worked, and I was actually wrong.
Yeah, no, me too. It was like when they first revealed like Flaxen, the little Goldilocks, and they revealed Goldilocks. That was the first adventure card, and I'm like, what the heck? But now I can explain for everyone. So adventure. So all adventures are a creature, but they are kind of like split cards. So when you have an adventure card in your hand, you can either play an instant or a sorcery that's like in the bottom left corner. That is the adventure. Or you can play the actual creature. If you play the actual creature, then it does the stuff written on the right that the creature says it does, and that's that. But if you cast the adventure first, then it will do what's in the adventure text only. Then when it resolves, which is important, so if it gets countered, this won't happen, it goes into exile, and then from exile, you can then play the creature. So a little extra value. It's pretty cool. You can do a lot of stuff with it.
Yeah, every adventure card, if you successfully use the adventure and then cast the creature, is a 2-for-1, which means every single adventure creature is at a bare minimum playable.
Yep.
All of them are 2-for-1s if you can use the front half of them. Some of the cards have front halves or back halves that are clearly the A version of the card, but most of the time they have at least one side that is useful. There are almost no adventures that are unplayable, which is absurd on a mechanic that shows up as much as Adventure does. It's on, I want to say, at least 30 cards, it feels like.
It's a lot. I don't know the exact number, but it is definitely on a lot of cards. And it's really interesting when you're evaluating them. It's like when you because only one side, if one side is good, then the card's probably just good. But when both sides are good, the card is usually like a lot better than you think it is. It takes so little for these cards. Like just one piece of it has to be good, and then the card gets there. Because it's like two magic cards, like a split card.
Yeah, but it's better because it's always like in I guess middle Ravnica.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
Dragon,
the middle. Oh yeah,
Dragon's
Return
Maze.
around it. Yeah, that was the fuse.
Yeah,
Fuse
it's like
split.
you always get fuse. You always get both halves
Mm-hmm.
of the split
Yep.
card, which is interesting. And another thing worth mentioning with adventure creatures is that they always count as a creature outside of when they're on the stack as at the adventure half. So if they're in their graveyard, they are not an instant and a creature or a sorcery and a creature. They are just a creature. So anything like Crackling Drake will not key off of them.
Yeah, also Narset will not hit them. Kind of awkward, but that is the truth.
Yep. So that is the minor drawback, but otherwise they're all really good. And this set also brings back colored artifacts, which show up occasionally here and there. So they're just artifacts that have colored mana costs, and they are the color of their mana cost, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking out for those, they're just artifacts with slightly more restrictive casting costs and usually more on-color abilities. We also have legendary artifacts.
Yeah, a whole cycle of them.
A whole cycle of them. We have legendary... Well, no, we don't have legendary lands. We have lands that look like they should be legendary but are not legendary.
Which makes them a lot better.
Which makes them way better.
A lot better.
And a lot of really cool cycles.
Yeah,
So,
no, there's a lot going on.
Should we do the limited review on this? Because I think in limited, it's going to be a lot centered around these big synergies and art adventures, because this set looks like, outside of Knights, a lot of the mechanics just boil down to extend the game, gain value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple interesting things, like, when I was like looking in Black, and like it's like whenever I look into a set, like the first two things I do, one of these I actually stole from you. It's like, one, I'm going to look at the multicolored uncommons, like tell me what each color Wizards at least is trying to do with the set. And then I'm going to look for like where the removal is. Cause like in the end of the day, a creature's a creature. Like, like, yes, there's some better creatures than other creatures, but creatures tend to be like kind of do their thing, But like the quality of removal, there's a lot more variety to that. Like removal can be like really good or really bad. So like trying to find where the good removal is usually like the first thing I do. So I was looking and I'm like, white and black, like actually white, black, there's a lot of good removal like kind of everywhere in this set, which is, I remember it kind of reminds me of Dominaria, where like they just had like the really awesome removal just thrown in common. Like we got like the Scorching Dragonfire in red, we got Reeve Soul in black, we have the Trapped Up in the Tower in white, and like blue is
Muscle in green.
Out Muscle in green, and Charm Sleep in blue. So every color has at least one really like top tier removal spell, which is really interesting. I don't think I've like seen that in a long time. So usually I think that's a good thing, honestly, because I hate like being bottlenecked into certain colors. Like it's like, oh, if I don't play these colors, I can't interact at all. I just throw my creatures at the wall and see if they stick.
Yeah, but it's an interesting tension in this set because they've given common strong removal to every color. Mm-hmm. There's also uncommon removal that's very good. But because of the adventure creatures, you've got a lot of creatures that if you 1-for-1 them, you're behind.
Yeah,
you've
that's
actually gotten behind on the exchange, and when that's the case, it makes the 1-for-1 removal like you still need it. Like in War of the Spark, you still needed to have all the incredibly pushed 1-for-1 removal that was available to you in that set. But if you just had a bunch of 1-for-1 removal, like Ob Nixilis's Cruelty and Spark Harvest, like even the premium stuff, if you didn't eventually snowball your opponent, they would just grind you out. You'd run out of things.
Oh, you're right. It's definitely it's definitely the removal is just one piece of the puzzle. That's for sure. You can't just like go overboard in it, because at the end of the day, if you don't have any creatures, then the power of your removal just kind of gets diminished, because like the point is you're able to invalidate most of their stuff by just having creatures on each side, and the really important stuff you take out with the removal. But yeah, no, adventures definitely change the name of the game. Like even at common, there's really good ones. Like there's the green one that's just a pump spell, and then like also a fine statted body. then there's like even like cards like the mine, like the 7-mana 4/5 with the mine rots your opponent on the adventure. Like, yeah, it's slow, but like that's that's like what I'm looking for in my 7-drop in limited, you know? Just like something that gets a little value, a little tiny value in the early game that comes down late, and it's just a 4/5 with flying when it attacks.
Yeah,
so.
And a lot of the power at rare and mythic, it's intensely higher than uncommon and common, I think.
Yeah, I usually don't tend to look too much at that because you're not going to see any one rare or mythic too often, but you do have a solid point still.
Yeah, like looking at some of the rares and mythics versus the uncommons, like the hybrid uncommons.
Oh yeah, they're
seem
great.
Especially pushed in terms of power level. Like they're very playable in limited, but none of them seem like premium uncommons to me. In the way that some of the single color ones do.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but like they at least some of them, yeah, you're right. Some of them are like really bad. Like, Drown Lock's obviously bad for limited, but like some of them are really pushed. Like,
oh no, I don't. I mean the hybrid ones, not the multicolor.
Oh, the hybrid. Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. I agree with the hybrid ones. I think they're not that pushed, but that makes sense too, right? Because like you don't even have to be like 2 colors to play them. You can kind of fit them in like a green X deck. Like you can fit them in like a base green or a base white deck without the other color, or like a base deck with like a little splash in like a different color, and you could still play them. So they don't want to like push those ones as hard.
Yeah, and I think they're also plants for Theros.
Yeah. Yes. No. There's
they didn't
need
to push them, but our Arcanist Owl seems playable. It seems good. Deathless Knight seems good. Elite Headhunter seems okay. I guess Lock Dragon it's still a 4-mana 3/2 flyer. It's not terrible. Arcane Ranger looks bad.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that's one of those things you're talking about with adventures, though, where it's just like 2-for-1s them. So
yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be better than it looks.
Yeah, it can't be bad. I mean, it's a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
It can only be so bad. I should say it can only be so bad.
Yeah. What's it called? That stupid unicorn from War of the Spark, like the 4-mana 2/2 that went and attack your team 1/1 till end of turn. That card was quite good. And this card looks looks like that, except like not better, but
except
like,
it can't attack.
But it doesn't have to attack. It can just it can just stay back and just like pump your team from the safety of your own side of the battlefield. So it's like an upside downside kind of thing. So like I wouldn't count these guys out, especially because like I can imagine also like the white black one, the 4-mana 4/2 that gives lifelink if you pay 2 and indestructible if you pay 3. That card's just really annoying to deal with in limited.
Yeah, that card's gonna be incredibly annoying. So I think maybe I was just whenever I see quadruple hybrid costs, I'm used to seeing just devastatingly strong cards, and these just all seem like good, very good to very good limited cards that if, say, some mechanic, I don't know, something like Devotion was to come back for some reason, some mechanic that cared about the number of colored mana symbols in your card, whatever, then they'd immediately become very good regardless of what their text says.
Yeah. No, I remember.
That's probably not going to happen.
Oh, no. Yeah, and if if you forget about like the uncommon, it's like, also like there's no way with like this, they printed this, what is it, 5 color legendary cycle of color legendaries that seem really good in monocolor decks. Yeah, that's definitely not preparing for Theros or anything like that.
No.
Yeah,
well,
no.
In limited, it looks like if we just go through the uncommons, we can kind of say what each of the color pairs are trying to do. Black, blue, that's Drown in the Lock. So this card does choose one, counter target spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or destroy target creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. Black-blue has a sub-theme of milling your opponent exactly 7 cards, so giving your opponent threshold, for those who remember Odyssey. And once they are at threshold, your cards will do extra stuff or be extra good.
Yeah, blue-black mills people. Who would have thought? Yeah, the card's not great for limited. Probably pretty. It might be good in modern. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out.
I think it's playable in modern. It will see play, but I don't think it's like bananas crazy. I think it'll probably be a 1 or a 2 of in modern decks that can cast it.
Yeah,
you can just play Magic for a while, and people will get a few cards in their graveyard. And if it's if it's just terminate counterspell split card, it's very pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just afraid against like the big mana decks, it might not get there, it is bad against those. But like, I don't know.
Push.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that's true. Like it'll probably see play. I don't know how much, but we don't need to figure. We can figure that out later in the constructed portion more.
Totally. So red green, we've got Grumgully the Generous, and he is a 3/3 with each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So he's a legendary creature at uncommon. They're doing that again, like
They are. They definitely are. And speaking of cards that'll see play, that will likely see play in Modern. I've heard some people like milling about playing this card in some sort of like goblin, like put it in like the goblins deck so they can get like an aristocrat's kill with like what's the guy called, the murderous redcap and a sack outlet, which sounds pretty metal.
That'll work.
It works, and you have 4 copies of Goblin Matron, so it's not even crazy unreasonable to assemble it. And also the card's just like decent on its base rate. So
just a 3/3 that pumps all of your other. It's an anthem for all your creatures you cast after it.
Yeah, it turns out all the goblins aren't humans, so just anthem for goblins.
Yep. So if what red and green are trying to do, it's got non-human creature synergies. So if you have non-human creatures, they will get better. Or pump other non-humans.
Not too much counter stuff going around I didn't see, but it's more the non-human part that's really to look for.
In red, blue, we've got Improbable Alliance. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, so it's a blue and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying, and then it has 4 generic, 1 blue, 1 red. Draw a card, then discard a card. So they've got a sub-theme of drawing 2 cards in a turn, and then you get benefits. Most of the cards are not especially pushed, at least for constructed purposes, but for limited, seems pretty good.
Yeah, I could see this card be. I have played Hidden Stockpile and Constructed before. This card seems a lot better than that card, so I could see this card seeing play. But yeah, like in Standard, obviously, no, like we got Bitter Blossom in Modern if you want to do that. But yeah, no, I think this card quite good. Well, yeah, the mechanic's kind of cool. Like, there's also the Pyromancer, which could make a fun deck, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. Limited.
Improbable Alliance makes you a fairy every turn if you draw on your opponent's turn twice.
Yeah, it's a little hard to do that, but then again, they did print that instant speed Tormenting Voice, so
You're not losing life. Think about it.
You are not losing life. Oh, you're actually saying in Modern.
Is it Blossom?
Yeah, there's they printed this 2-drop pretty recently. Pretty good in Modern. Stoneforge Mystic, have you heard of it? I don't know.
Yeah, but this one's got this second ability. Bitter Blossom doesn't have a second ability. It lets you draw a card, discard a card.
You are right. It does not. It actually hurts you with its unset second ability. I don't like getting hurt. This one just helps me.
Yeah, and it's the best. It's the 2 best colors, red and blue.
Yeah. Red was the best color in Modern at one point, but I don't think it's kind of fell from grace at this point.
You can pitch it to Force of Will.
You drive a hard bargain. Or Force of Negation for you modern people.
Exactly. So for white and red, we've got Inspiring Veteran. It is a human knight, 2/2 for 2, so 1 red, 1 white. Other knights you control get +1/+1, so you've got a lord for knights.
Yeah, I wonder what Wizards was trying to tell you. Yeah, I wonder what Wizards was trying to tell you with this one.
In blue-green, you've got Marileaf Pixie, 1 green, 1 blue, for a 2/2 flyer, and then it can tap to add a green or a blue. So blue-green is doing ramp stuff again, and also it's got flying.
Just play large CMC idiots. Blue and green loves doing that, and they're doing it again. So.
It's like Gaia Skyfolk used to be playable, and this is strictly better Gaia Skyfolk.
Anyway, card's great. Might even see standard play, but I'm not sure. We have a lot of really solid ramp options right now at 2 mana, so
totally.
But it's definitely for consideration.
Yep, it is not immediately dismissible, which is nice in an
uncommon. Yeah.
In green-black, we've got Savvy Hunter, 1 black-green, for a 3/3 human warrior. Whenever Savvy Hunter attacks or blocks, create a food token, sacrifice 2 foods, draw a card. So black and green are the food colors. The primary food colors. So this card's going to be keying off of all of your other foods and making some as well, so it's self-sufficient, which is cool.
Yeah, no food like that. Completely, just it's nice that they tell you where to go for it. But I think this card is a great payoff because it turns all your foods into good clues. Well, kind of half clues. So, which is pretty good because food is easier to make.
Totally. Just like in real life, it's easier to bake a pie than to murder someone and then leave behind some fingerprints.
Yes, it is. unless you're baking someone into the pie, which is something you could do in this set. But...
So I wish we got I guess you could bake into a pie a card that dies into a clue, and then you get a clue and a food.
It's like, what happened to him? We have this pie here. But I don't know.
What could have happened?
There's
a pie, and then there's this blood-stained feather.
I don't know. Not looking too good. Yeah, the flavor of this set, quite figuratively and literally, is on point.
Yes. For white-blue, we've got Shine Chaser, 1 white-blue for a 1/1 fairy with flying and vigilance. It gets +1/+1 as long as you control an artifact, and +1/+1 as long as you control an enchantment. So if you have an artifact and an enchantment, this is a 3-mana, 3/3 flying vigilance, which is way above rate.
It is, but I'm still not excited about this card because that's so much work for limited.
I mean, it's not that much work because they have artifact creatures in.
Yeah, but no, artifact's easy enough, but enchantment's the one I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that one's a bit more dubious. If they add enchantment creatures.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about unlimited. I don't think this card's even worth considering in constructed. But yeah, it
gets a little boost from Trapped in the Tower. Just a little bit.
Yeah, okay. That's a flavor win too because it's got the key.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Look at that flavor. But yeah, I can't imagine this thing ever seeing playing constructed when we got Mr. Time Raveler for the same CMC.
Totally. In black-red, we've got Steel Claw Lance. It's black-red for an equipment. An equipped creature gets +2/+2. It has equipped Knight 1, equip 3 normally. So it's an equipment that is very pushed if you're equipping it to a Knight, and very medium if you're equipping it to anything else.
Yep. I remember, what was that card? It was like, I forgot what that card was called. It was literally like this card without the Knight part, and it was colorless. And it was like I think it was an Eldritch Moon or something. Or no.
Ghostfire Blade.
No, that's the one from Cons, but I mean, it was just like a common limited card. This wasn't a constructed card. But I remember I played with it. It was like, I can't remember the name of it.
Axe or something like that?
Something like that. Whatever. But my point is, like, just like being able to play this for 2, then like equip it for 3. And then it's not like the worst thing in the world. And if you just play a bunch of Knights, this card's just dumb. Like, really dumb.
It's really good if you've got the Knight deck, which that is what red and black are trying to do.
It is.
In green-white, we've got Wandermare, 1 green-white for a 3/3 horse. Whenever you cast a creature spell that has adventure, put a +1/+1 counter on Wandermare. So it is an adventure synergy card, and white and green have the most adventures. So if you play your adventure creatures, your Wandermare will get big. There you go.
Go adventuring.
Play the 2-for-1s.
Yeah, play the 2-for-1. That's exactly what I was going to say.
And then the last card we have for our multicolor cards at Uncommon is Wintermoor Commander. It is the white-black multicolored card. It is white-black for a 2-star Death Touch, and its toughness is equal to the number of knights you control. Whenever it attacks, another target knight you control gains indestructible until end of turn. So, Knight synergies.
Card's great.
White, black, red. Those are the Knight colors, and this card will play very well the more knights you have.
It does. Yeah, like, it's also pretty decent on base rate. Like, I wouldn't be splashing this card in limited, but, like, if I'm in white and black, like, I don't need any knights to make this good. And if I have knights, it's excellent. So, yeah, good card. I'm a fan.
Totally. It is at worst a 2-mana, 2/1 Death Touch.
Which is, like, not even
totally
bad.
reasonable.
Yep. That is, like, I have played, Hand of Silumgar Unlimited and been happy about it. So, this card's that, if you're in white-black.
Totally. And it with way more upside.
A lot more upside.
So that's kind of your multicolor, your archetypes in limited.
Yeah, the quick overview.
This set does not have much in the way of common land fixing. It's got a good number of common fixing at artifact.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you bring that up because I feel like they're pushing like monocolor in this set too with admin, where they almost don't want you to branch into a second color, or very sparingly if you do.
Yeah, and most of the multicolor synergy cards are one-time use or 3 mana or more, in which case you're probably not going to be able to do too much in the way of fixing.
Yeah, or heck, like the multicolored cards are like the 4 hybrid, which is great in monocolored. Like, I don't almost argue even better.
Yeah, so I don't see a compelling reason to stretch your mana. There's some sets where there's just a 5-color green deck that is totally reasonable and limited. In this set, it seems like there might be a 5-color green deck. There's enough fixing to make that happen. And the rares and mythics are strong enough that if you just want to play all of them, I wouldn't blame you. But it doesn't seem like it's an archetype that's going to come up all the time.
Yeah, I would think that. I think when in doubt, I would say do less with your colors this set, especially since they have the cycle of 5 common lands that reward you if you have 3 or more of its basic land type. So, which is like, and they're common lands, so you're gonna see these a lot. So if you can just like make a monocolor deck, these are like really solid payoffs because like they're such a low opportunity cost if you already go in.
Exactly, and they do trigger each other. So if you play one of these cycle of lands, they're Dwarven Mine, Gingerbread Cabin. What a good name for a card. Mystic Sanctuary, Witch's Cottage, and the white one is Idyllic Grange. Mm-hmm. They are land type, plains, forest, mountain, swamp, island, but they enter tapped unless you have 3 or more of their land type. So they will count towards future ones if you have to play it early for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they will. That's an important detail because if you just get a bunch of these stuck in your hands, pretty bad, but it's not as bad as it would be.
Totally. They at least synergize with themselves, which is good.
Yeah.
So with that limited coverage out of the way, let's go over to Constructed. Let's look at Standard. So why don't we start with the showstopper? What do you think is the best card in this set?
Yeah, so I've kind of been mulling over a few
standard.
of the for standard. Yeah, I've been mulling over. There's been a few cards that have kind of been on my radar, like the ones people think about a lot, where you have like Questing Beast is obviously great. The Great Henge is really good. That stupid card that's like the Fairy or Brazen Borrow is very good. But like this is also my pick, also not very controversial, but I was not a believer of this card until I saw it in action. But when I saw it in action, I was like, holy hell, this card is so good. Oko, Thief of Crowns. 3-mana Planeswalker. This card is dumb.
Yeah!
Like hella dumb. Oh my god. Just runs you over and it keeps going up, 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 up. It never goes down. Like, oh yeah. So for people who don't know, Oko, Thief of Crowns, 3-mana Planeswalker, always a good start there. So 1 blue and a green. It starts at 4 loyalty, which is actually pretty high for a 3-mana Planeswalker. It has a +2 to make a food token, a +1 to turn an artifact or creature that you or your opponent controls, doesn't matter, but whoever controls it, it turns into a 3/3 elk.
With no abilities.
No abilities. So yeah, removes all the abilities from whatever that thing was. So whatever it was, it's no longer that. It's a 3/3 elk now. And it has a -5, which exchanges control of target artifact or creature your opponent control, or that artifact or creature you control with with a creature of power 3 or less that your opponent controls. Which may be like a food that might be conveniently sitting around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems decent. Like
the play pattern with Oko is really messed up. Like you go turn 3 Oko, assuming you've done nothing else. You +2 make a food token. Mm-hmm. Your opponent, if they didn't play a very aggressive opening hand, they will not be able to kill Oko because he's going to be at 6 loyalty. And even if they kill Oko, they spent their entire 4th turn killing your Planeswalker that gave you a food. So you're at least not behind, entirely. It time-walked them. Like, that's not time.
A little. Yeah, a little bit.
It's not the worst. Like, it's not a 3-mana Planeswalker. Like,
yeah, it depends on the context in which it dies, of course. Like, if they spend, like a burn spell to kill it, then you're like, awesome. But if they spend, if they just, attack with all the creatures, it's like, oh, that was a little unfortunate.
Oko dying after making a food is better than Teferi dying after plussing and giving you nothing. Right?
Yeah, but usually if Teferi's in jeopardy of that happening, you just do a -3 and let it get run over by whatever your opponent has.
Oh, totally. Like, they're not super comparable, but I'm just saying, like, Oko, at least on his plus, leaves you with something, and his loyalty is so high that most opponents won't be able to kill him without spending a card.
It's absurdly high.
So once you've plussed, he then either is in a position to make your food into a 3/3, so he just upgrades you. He's making a 3/3 every other turn, which as a just 3-mana Planeswalker is absurd. Like Kaya was playable. What did she do as a plus? She just exiled cards from your opponent's graveyard, slowly ticking up in loyalty until she ultimated multiple times to kill them in most cases, and her removal half barely removed anything. But with Oko, because he makes 3/3s and then can turn your opponent's things into 3/3s by minusing them, he'll make a 3/3 and then your opponent is forced to trade with it.
Yeah.
Everything is trading once Oko gets going, and he's gaining loyalty the whole time. But even worse, if they play something after he's created his food, you're just threatening to steal it and still have Oko.
Yeah, playing Oko onto an empty board is just really, really, really good especially in the early turns. And like it also is like a color bend where like the plus, like, well, yes, you aren't actually breaking out of the colors. It's like you're giving solid removal to a color combo that usually doesn't get solid removal in green and blue. So there's just like that too, and it's just like I feel like I don't know, it's just all the play patterns of this card are just really, really absurd, and I can't imagine this card's not going to run over standard in some way, shape, or form. Probably alongside Teferi Time Raveler, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying is probably going to be a very dominant deck, at least in the early goings. Just Bant Planeswalkers. And my strongest card in the set, Call, actually synergizes with Oko a lot. My call is for Gilded Goose.
Yes, I was going to that was what I was going to say. Good call, though. Good call.
So Gilded Goose is an unassuming little card. It is 1 green for a 0/2 flying bird. When it enters the battlefield, it creates a food token. And then you can pay 1 and a green to tap it and create another food token. And you can tap it, sacrifice a food to add 1 mana of any color. So at its face, it is a Bird of Paradise you can use once. With an extra toughness, which is also useful.
And not irrelevant.
Not irrelevant. So it actually blocks better than Bird of Paradise. Like the 2 toughness is relevant.
Yeah, like if your opponent goes Dreadhorde Butcher on 2, and it's like, oh.
Getting blocked by the stupid goose. But the first time you use a bird or a Llanowar Elf or any sort of mana ramp creature for 1 mana, that is the most important use in most cases. Like jumping from 1 to 3 is the sauce.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll use that card more than once, but if you get to use it once and it doesn't die, you're generally pretty happy. And this one fixes your colors. It adds 1 mana of any color, unlike Llanowar Elves. So it lets you splash things much easier. It fixes your mana. But if Gilded Goose dies, which most 1 mana ramp creatures do, it leaves you behind the food.
Yeah.
So you're ahead. Like
you are
maybe half a card of value.
I wouldn't say a food's a half a card, but it's value. It's value.
It makes your next Gilded Goose get to activate twice. It turns on any of your other food synergies if you have them. It gains you 3 life in the worst case scenario. If you have any artifact synergies, it turns those on. It's just doing a bunch of things that a 1 mana ramp creature has no business doing. You don't need to have any of this for it to have totally been good. And it even becomes, in the mid to late game, a food engine itself. You can just keep making food and gaining value at no cost to you. Like, most 1 mana ramp creatures, after turn 1 or 2, after their ramping is done and you've expended your hand, they actually do nothing. They can't attack, they can't block, they can't do anything. And this it even has flying, so it can block flying creatures.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think also just with the context of having both Oko and Gilded Goose, which synergize so well with each other in multiple senses, where like either like where Gilded Goose will get your Oko out of turn early, and then either you have 2 really solid play patterns depending on what the texture of the rest of your hand is from there, where either A, you can plus Oko, make some more food, which then gives your Gilded Goose some more chow to feed on, or if you don't have that much more like bigger stuff you want to ramp into, you can plus Oko on the Gilded Goose to turn your useless O2 into a 3/3 that can just get in there next turn.
Yeah, unfortunately it would lose flying, but like that's still, hey, that is still making.
It's like turn 1 I played a 3/3, then turn 2 I played a planeswalker that's on a really pushed planeswalker that's on 5 loyalty. Like,
it makes a lemonade.
That makes lemonade. Just keeps making you lemonade, man. Like, I think it's really strong and it's really fast too, which it also kind of circumvents one of the downsides of Oko, where it's not as good if you're really behind on board. Because if you get it out so fast, you're probably not going to be very behind on board.
They can't kill a 6 loyalty planeswalker on turn 3. There's no deck that I think could do it.
Yeah, heck, even turn 2 if you're on the play. So you just play like a Scryland, and it's like, oh, they're facing down an Oko with a 3/3.
Yeah, an Oko with a 3/3 or a 0/2 that's ramping, continuing to ramp. It's just a messed up play pattern. I think that those 2 cards are going to be bestest friends, and I don't think the reason I think the Goose is slightly stronger is I don't think it's locked to a deck. I think that any deck that plays green will play the Goose, and it is strong enough that by itself that I think it heavily incentivizes putting green in your deck.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that was green blue is inherently, of course, more limiting than mono green, of course. But I wouldn't say Oko. I think Oko's plenty strong enough to see play in multiple different archetypes within green blue. I don't think it's pigeonholed. I don't think you have to have any food synergies to be playing this card. I think like you just have to be doing like powerful proactive things, and this guy's going to be really good. Like I went with Teferi Time Raveler to be my best one for the Spark. So let's just keep running it back with 3 mana walkers. Can't be that bad.
Nope, can't be that bad. Do you have another card that you think might be up there? If not the best card in the set, but like close.
Yeah. No, like there's a couple really. So like with obviously Questing Beast is a very obvious one. So like I wasn't like
please. I'll read all of the modes because it's got too many lines of text on it to just say Questing Beast. So this thing is a 2 green 4/4 legendary creature beast. It has Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And when Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. This card seems almost reverse engineered to deal with the War of the Spark cards.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is what its purpose is. But like, it's kind of weird because it also does a little bit of color pie bending, where it's like a really well-statted creature with haste in green, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And
they just do it when they want to push a mythic.
Yeah, no, I know. It almost feels like cheating to say this. Like, obviously this card's good. I feel like I'm not really bringing too much to the table here. But like if it's like the one next best card, it's like this card's just gonna be like when you're playing a green deck, you're gonna have to have a really good reason not to play some number of this card in your deck. Like while there are reasons to not play it, you have to have a compelling reason. This card's great on offense. This card's great on defense. It's great at pressuring planeswalkers, which is a huge thing in standard right now. And if there's that one guy still playing,
blocked.
It cannot be chump blocked. Oh yeah, for some reason that's a thing too, which is like probably the best way to get around it. Which not anymore. And also for that one guy who's still playing Root Snare, get wrecked, nerd.
Yeah. So. This card. The only reason I could see that this card would not be good is if a 4-mana 4/4 just isn't enough. Like, if you're going to do something that goes over it, like with flying with a ton of power, or you're just commanding the Dread Horde, or playing Nissa.
It's so much more than a 4-mana 4/4. Like, it's so much more. Like, I know you're saying, like, command the Dread Horde and Nissa and stuff, but, like, this card gets around those cards really well. Like, this card does an excellent job at pressuring Nissa, because, like, you hit them, and 33 does a very poor job at hitting Nissa. So you hit Nissa for 4, and you hit them for 4. Then the next turn it's like, oh, okay, now I have 2 elementals. I can double block, I guess. But then this thing just kills both my elementals, and now I'm down 2 lands. Like, okay.
I'm not saying that it's like a good situation. I'm just saying, what is the circumstance in which this incredibly pushed mythic that's 4 mana for a 4/4 with all of the text in the world is not good? Literally the only way I can see it not being good is a context in which it just doesn't – that's not what the game is about. The game is not about creatures. It's not about playing to the board. Either that thing just dies on sight immediately every time, or it just doesn't matter. Like your opponent is going way over the top and your 4/4 can't kill them fast enough.
Yeah, I just like the funny thing about that though is I just can't see it happening purely because this card is so like good at encouraging people to do that I think even if it wasn't quite good enough to play to the board, I think this is like a solid argument for playing to the board.
Yeah,
so,
it's very pushed, and
pushed.
I expect to see a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
So my next one is, I think, very on theme for me. It's Torben Thane of Redfell. It is 1 red.
Oh, good call.
A 2/4 Dwarf Noble, legendary Dwarf Noble. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead.
Yeah.
So this is permanent turn 3 of Flame of Keld, permanent chapter 3 of Flame of Keld on a dwarf. So he's functionally a 4/4.
Yeah, except against Oko, but
Yeah.
But that's probably not going to happen. But
functionally a 4/4 in most cases because he increases his own damage. But increasing the amount of damage that a single red source does is inherently just nutty, bonkers, crazy powerful. Like, I've already seen decks with, is it Sparkspitter, the 1 mana 1/1 elemental that deals 1 when it attacks?
Oh, yeah, the little lizard or whatever. Yeah.
The little lizard. You play that in Cavalcade of Calamity?
Yeah. Yeah, just throw a Chandra Spitfire in for good measure, and they're probably dead the turn this guy comes down. Have to
Yeah,
imagine.
I mean, if all you have is a Spark Spitter and a Cavalcade, and you just attack, you've dealt them not, and it isn't blocked. So it's 6 damage that's unblockable, and then 9 if they don't block it, and that's a 1/1 and a 2-drop.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even trying that hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's funny. Whenever I see a red 4-drop within the context of this standard, I'm like, okay, is this card better than Experimental Frenzy? And usually it's like with Rekindling Phoenix, with the new Chandra. Usually I'm like, no, this is obviously worse. But this is the first time looking, and I'm like, does this have upside over Experimental Frenzy? And I'm like, yeah, this does. This thing, like, if I'm like on the board, like playing Experimental Frenzy does nothing. Well, this just kills my opponent, like on the spot.
Yeah, it makes burn decks possible almost all by itself.
Yeah.
And if you have a few ways to deal repeatable sources of damage, even 1 damage, this will force through the finishing blow on most everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just plays very similar to the Flame of Keld, except instead of playing it with an empty hand and then waiting a turn or two, this guy just comes down on turn 4 and kills them.
Yeah. No, I think it's a lot better than Flame of Keld, but yeah, it's just, it's almost crazy because, like, as I was saying with Experimental Frenzy, it's like the earlier part, it's like, it used to be like, well, is this better than Experimental Frenzy? But like, Frenzy might get pushed out by this card. Like, Frenzy might be the card that can't compete with this, which is kind of scary to think about because Frenzy is very strong. So we'll see. But this card's really good.
Yeah. So why don't we go one more just like raw power, and then let's go to our sleepers.
Yeah, for sure. So another very, like, this card, I literally can't not say this card because it's going to be a staple in Standard for as long as it's going to be legal. Black decks are going to love it. It's Murderous Rider. So an adventure card, a rare adventure. So its adventure is the real meat of the card is Swift End, 1 and 2 black, instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker, you lose 2 life. So Hero's Downfall, you lose 2, not too great. But the other side is the same CMC, 1 and 2 black, for a 2/3 with lifelink. That when it dies, you put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So this is just, like, we needed Hero's Downfall in Standard, especially with Vraska's Contempt going off. Not that was even good enough nowadays, but this Standard needs a Hero's Downfall. And this is a Hero's Downfall with I would say, yes, the 2 life when you play it immediately is a downside, but you can recoup it because it has lifelink. So the in a lot of matchup doesn't even matter if you take 2. So, like, this, and even if it's, like, really bad to, like, lose 2, you can just play the 2/3 with lifelink, because in the scenario where taking 2 is bad, the scenario where playing a 2/3 with lifelink is probably good. So we need Downfall. This is Downfall, but I think better. So, black decks rejoice. You have a good removal spell.
Yeah, it's a Hero's Downfall is kind of the gold standard of black removal, like fair black removal.
Yep.
And this is that plus a creature stapled onto it.
Yeah, I don't want to
say because.
Yeah, I don't want to say strictly better, but it's pretty darn close. So.
Yeah, it's not strict, but
it's not. But
it's damn close.
It's really close. I think it is better, but that is obviously an opinion. But one that I have. This card's really good. I'm like, as a control player, I am happy to see stuff like this because we need solid, flexible answers to kind of get around what your opponent's trying to do, and this does that. So
it's also creature type Knight, which is also relevant.
Very relevant. I think the Knight deck's all over this card because, like, you don't want to play, like, playing removal spells in your aggro deck's always been kind of an awkward thing because, like, you gotta kind of, like, make sure you still have enough stuff to go face, which is why mono red was always, like, I'd say the best aggro deck because, like, your removal spell was burn spells, so if they're at low life total, you just went face, and that's great. But this kind of, like, circumvents that downside in a different way, where, like, it gives you a creature, which is on, like, a good tribal creature on that. So
tribal both ways, tribal knights and tribal zombies.
Yep. Oh yeah, zombies. I didn't even know that was a tribe right now, but
not right this second necessarily, but it's a relevant tribe.
It is.
Like it's
It did take down Pro Torama and Ket or whatever, or was it? Yeah, I think it was Jerry Thompson. Yeah. So yep. So zombies has had its time in the sun, so it could have its time going forward. We'll see.
Theros returned from the dead, is it?
Yeah, it's like something from death. Like Theros from Death or something. Yeah, I'm butchering the name right now.
Theros has had zombie stuff before. We'll see.
Yeah.
So my next one, I wanted to shout out Bone Crusher Giant. I'm not going to say Bone Crusher Giant, but that card's really good.
Yeah,
it's also very obviously pushed. But I'm going to go to a card that I think is more ludicrously powerful, and I'm flummoxed that this card exists. Vantress Gargoyle.
Ah, an interesting one to go with for sure.
So it's 1 colorless, 1 blue. So it's 2 mana for a 5/4 flyer. But wait, you say, that rate is absurd. That can't be. Well, it's okay. There's a downside.
Yeah.
Vantress Gargoyle can't attack unless the defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Okay, so it's a defender. Oh, wait, it can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand. But it has tap. Each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, and it is an artifact creature gargoyle. So some of the things that are going on with this card. When you play it on turn 2, it will always be able to block unless your opponent is aggressively going after your hand, which I don't even think they could do.
Yeah, and even if they are, that means they're putting cards in their graveyard, so, like, it'll probably attack.
It'll attack soon. So it is just giving you this 5/4 blocker for 2, which will just block everything. It will trade up against everything in the early and mid game, and as long as you're not just like dumping your hand, which if you're a even slightly controlling deck is not that hard of an ask, and its tap ability is going to activate it eventually, right? It's a 7-turn clock, assuming your opponent's somehow not sending anything to their graveyard, which if you've played Magic before, that's not how this goes.
It is not.
Your opponent will lose cards eventually. That's why Tarmogoyf is so good. It read like it was a drawback, right? It read like, oh, people have to put things in their graveyard. I need to build my deck so that it's got all these types. But the real answer is no, you don't. You don't have to do any of that. Same thing with Delve. Like, oh, how will I get all these cards into my graveyard so that I can eventually cast my Delve cards for cheap? No, you just play Magic. And if you play Magic for a long enough game, you will eventually get 7 cards into your graveyard, and then this card is bonkers.
Yeah.
Like, I think that this card in a controlling deck, it holds down the board early, and it will eventually just murder your opponent for incredibly cheap. It is a great top deck late, because it is always a 5/4. Like, if you 5/4 flying attacker in the late game, if you're even a slightly controlling deck, keeping 4 cards in your hand isn't that hard either, especially with all the card advantage that's available in Standard right now. So I think all of those reasons, you're going to love Vantress Gargoyle, but also because it is an artifact creature, you're going to be able to play it with, what is her name? What's her name?
Wait, which card are we talking about?
Emry, Lurker of the Loch.
Ah, that's another really push card.
So that one is 2 and a blue for a 1/2, and we're going to talk about this in modern context. This spell costs 1 less to catch for each artifact you control. When she enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then tap, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. So Vantress Gargoyle with Emry, you can kind of infinitely recast the Gargoyle as long as she's in play. You can get all sorts of artifact synergies going with Karn and with other effects like that. It just seems like it does a whole hell of a lot. And if you're in green-blue, you can also play Vantress Gargoyle and then play our good buddy, the Great Henge.
Yeah, no, that's another one of those cards that was definitely on my, like, when you were saying best cards, that was another big consideration. So, oh yeah, I was seeing people, like, trying, at least in Standard, with, like, the 3-mana 7/6 and just going the Great Henge and kind of, like, doing this weird, like, combo-y kind of kill where you just draw so many cards. And it's just,
you can use Rotting Regisaur with the Great Henge.
Yes.
But you can also, like, just play Vantress Gargoyle, and then on turn 4, you play the Great Henge.
Ah,
like
yes.
Or turn 1, Gilded Goose, turn 2, Vantress Gargoyle, turn 3, Great Henge.
Yeah, no, Emry is quite good. Just, I feel like it just gets better the deeper you go into Magic. Like, basically, it's better, and like, it's going to be really good in Modern. This card's definitely I think this card's got real legs in something like Urza. Like, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it'll see play, but like, it has the power to speed. Legacy, I don't know if I don't know, maybe Legacy, I'm not sure. Like, I pitched Force of Will the other day, so it could be worse. But Vintage, obviously, this guy's going to be a hoose. So.
Yeah. Emry. So I think Vantress Gargoyle for Standard, Emry definitely in Modern. Like, I see her finding a spot in Cheerios decks. She fills a hole that, as someone who's been trying to build kind of monocolor or artifact storm, she, as a functionally 1-mana legend, to turn on your Mox Ambers, like, that deck desperately wanted its Mox Ambers to work immediately on turn 0, and she lets you do that. She's great if you're playing with Jeskai Ascendancy is a kill
Yeah,
condition.
no, I was about to say, like, you can kind of do an infinite with Jeskai Ascendancy and something like either Mishra's Bauble or like Arcum's Astrolabe. You can kind of go off.
Tormod's Crypt.
Tormod's Crypt. Yeah.
You can go off any number of ways with her. So she's any sort of degenerate combo deck. There's no way she sees fair play, I don't think.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
She'll see a billion unfair things because she's cost reduction and self-mill and rebuys all on a legendary creature body. So she has literally everything going for her. I'm almost certain she will see play in Legacy and Modern and probably also Vintage. She's gross.
Yeah, yeah. She's really
so let's
good.
go to sleepers for Standard. Are there any sleepers you see?
Yeah.
Cards that you think are very good, but maybe other people are thinking like, eh.
Yeah, so there were two cards I had in mind, but I think one is a lot more like of a sleeper than the other one. So my pick for a sleeper of the set is Mr. Realm Cloak Giant. So we got another adventure.
You think the 5-mana sweeper that's also a 7/7 finisher is a sleeper?
Hey man, I'm telling, no one likes the board whites, man. They're like, oh, Kaya's Rat's better. It costs 4 mana. Like, I don't think Control's gonna be very good to Fairy Time Raveler. Like, and all those things are real concerns, but I still think this card's gonna be absurd. I think it's quite good. Like,
yeah.
It's just like, because it does this thing in Control decks where I don't know if traditional Control's gonna be good, but like, Control doesn't like playing win condition cards, and this card is like not a win condition, but it is a win condition, and it kind of has like the Thing in the Ice effect, where like the non-giant and it is a giant, so like you can play it and then play another adventure and like do like this, like where like you like Plague when your opponent, which is another really silly thing. Or if you play it with Teferi Time Raveler, you can like bounce it to your hand and then have it cast off again, which is
every adventure card has Teferi synergy.
Yeah, this one especially too, on both ends, where you can plus Teferi to give it instant speed, board wipe, which is always great, or you can minus it to bounce to your hand to go off again on your adventure. So
the only downside with that giant is that I think Bone Crusher Giant is going to be ubiquitous in red decks, and having red decks' most ubiquitous threat not die to your board wipe is
bad.
Mundo bad.
Yeah.
Mucho bad.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not like ideal, but I think the card, just like the power level, is just kind of off the charts, and I have not seen many people talking about this card, so maybe everyone's like, oh my god, this card's amazing, but everyone's kind of like, everyone's been kind of turned off of Control because of the ubiquity of Teferi Time Raveler for the longest time. So this card, I don't know what kind of Control deck, but I think the best Control deck is going to have 4 copies of this in it.
So what was your other card that you thought was a sleeper that you wanted to shout out?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm like having like a brain fart right now. But here I'm gonna definitely remember it by the time.
Okay, I can go first.
Yeah.
So the card I really, really, really like is Fires of Invention.
Oh, good one.
So Fires of Invention is 3 in a red for an enchantment. You can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. Oh, that's really bad. You can cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs. Without paying their mana costs.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I just got my card back. So when we're ready to go with that, back to your card. Yes,
so Fires of Invention is like Experimental Frenzy for mid-range decks.
Yeah.
Like Experimental Frenzy uncapped your ability to just like rifle through cards. Your 1-mana cards and 2-mana cards would replace themselves. They all would cantrip, and you could just kind of go off, right? You just play multiple spells in a turn. Fires of Invention does the same thing, but for decks with 3, 4, 5-mana cards. Instead of waiting to like combo off all these 1 and 2-mana things to burn your opponent out, this one just lets you go way, way, way over the top of them by, on turn 4 or 5, doubling your mana functionally or tripling it if you're using the mana. Because you're not tapping your lands to play these spells. You're playing them for free, and your lands are still untapped, and they still make mana. So if you can play a card like, say, Cavalier of Flames that has an activated ability that you could use the mana for, you can then just use Fires of Invention to play the Cavalier and then use all your mana on giving the Cavalier haste and murdering your opponent. It's just really strong. It functionally it will at least double your mana, and it oftentimes triples it.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. I can't imagine I'm just thinking of the lines right now. Like, let's say your opponent has like an absurd board or something like that, and then turn 5 you go play land, cast off Cavalier of Flame. Like, I don't know if that's the ideal way to build the deck, but the power level is there. It is so,
and
so there.
it does not care about color restrictions.
It does
so
not.
You can just cast anything as long as it's as expensive or less expensive than the number of lands you have. So as long as you're building around it, like you could splash off-color spells, you can have your nice hybrid split cards from Ravnica and get to cast the dual-colored half, and you can only really cast the hybrid half, but as long as you have Fires of Invention in play, you can cast both halves. Like, it lets you do a whole bunch of very nutty things for not that much. I think we already learned from Wilderness Reclamation that a 4-mana card that doubles your mana is good enough, and this one does not have the Teferi problem.
It does not.
When Fires of Invention's in play, even if they deal with your fires, you will have gotten paid by it because you will get to cast something immediately. So it was definitely free, as long as you have another card to cast. And if it survives for a turn, it's very hard for your opponent to win if you have anything at all to follow up.
Yeah, no, it's actually kind of interesting because, like, versus, like, if a card like Wilderness Reclamation, it's like, oh, Teferi just blows us all out. But this card's like, oh, I'll just Teferi Time Ravel myself. I don't care about your passive anymore. But, like, yeah, the text isn't exactly the same. But the downside on this is kind of just, like, putting yourself in the Teferi lock anyway. So, plays very well. You just have to
want to do big, powerful sorcery things.
Yeah, exactly. This card does not like instants. Not a lot. If it did, it would probably be absurd. So, or like actually absurd, like too good absurd. So, thankfully, it does not. But yeah, I'd be surprised.
But it still might be.
It might be absurd. We'll find out. Turns out, like it's also like a form of card advantage where like the downside is like if the downside is only being able to play 2 spells per turn, they're anticipating that like you're not going to be able to play all the stuff off of this, which means you're not going to run out of gas, which is another thing that's pretty dumb. But we'll see.
Bonkers with all the Cavaliers. But especially with the red one and the blue one.
Generates an obscene amount of mana, not a huge downside. I remember when I was reading this card, like I read the first line of text, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm getting ready for something crazy in this second line. And I wasn't disappointed. So
what was your other sleeper?
Yes. So the other sleeper, this card, so it's Return of the Wild Speaker. This card, so what the card does is 4 and a green for an instant, very important to note, and it's choose one, draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. So both of these cards have kind of existed at this mana cost for like this effect in green, but they have never existed together on one card and as an instant, so, like, I think this card's, like, might be, like, just, like, a really good, like, one of, like, the best modal green cards to kind of exist in a long time because, like, the people have, like, talked about having the tension between the two modes was, like, it's like, oh, that's a bad thing. But I'm like, because it's like, oh, don't you want to put, like, big creatures in your deck or do you want to put a bunch of little creatures in your deck? It's like, no, you can do either. And it's not bad if you do one or the other. So it's, like, a lot of the situations where one of these cards is bad, one of these modes is bad, the other mode is going to be very good. And the fact that it's an instant means you're going to get it blown out a lot less often with this kind of effect because, like what was it? Shamanic Revelation was kind of the last time they did something like this, and it was a sorcery. So, like, if you casted it and your opponent just killed your creature, it's like, well, that sucked. But like it being an instant now, also with like if your opponent lines up a bunch of blocks when you're attacking with your bunch of guys, and you just overrun them, like. Your opponent just gets absolutely demolished or dead in combat. So it's just like there's no one deck that just fits in, but it's just like so flexible and so powerful in what it does on both modes. I think it's got to see some amount of play.
Yeah, I think it's strong. It's an overrun or a draw spell, and like you said, you usually have to pick which one you want to include in your deck.
Yeah.
And at instant speed, it takes all the tension out of, am I going to cast my overrun? It's like, oh, you didn't block.
You're dead. Yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. Except I remember people on this forums talking about how it's like, oh, it doesn't give trample, so your guys are going to get through. It's like, but your opponent doesn't know they're about to get overrun. They're like, when you cast overrun, usually it's like, okay, I have to like figure out blocks to not die. But your opponent could be like, oh, like my opponent just attacking in. Let me try and block for a little bit of value, and then they just die. Like,
yeah. And it's like the whole trick. The reason why you need to play around overrun is because you see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
With this one, if your opponent makes good blocks, you don't cast it.
Yeah, or even
just draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, or better yet, if they do see it coming, they block accordingly. You're like, okay, that's fine. I'll just have the damage happen. Like, you're not priced in. You don't have to do it. No, I think like also giving green like solid card draw like this, I think is really good. Because like I don't know, green, like, it gets card draw every so often. But I feel like it's kind of been a little sparse lately. Like, you used to have stuff like Childless Tracker, but there's nothing really like that anymore. So, you
I
know.
mean, the Great Henge. It's the
Yeah,
Great
like,
Henge.
oh, yeah, that card, the new card, sure. Yeah, that card's pretty good. But you got to work for that card a little bit. I guess you have to work for this one a little bit too. But like, also with like stuff like, was it the Mythic Convoke card from Ravnica? It's like where it's basically a Secure the Waste for green, white, and X, where it makes guys with lifelink.
March to the Multitudes.
Yes, that's exactly the card I was talking about. So like, just going like, so like if you have no board, then you just go like end step March, untap, return. They just die like from nowhere. And it doesn't even take that much to do that. That's like 2 cards in like a green-white deck. I'm not sure how good green-white's going to be, but like that seems like a pretty like solid. That could seem like it could be a solid thing. Like green-white doesn't have a whole lot of reach, and this is kind of a way to give it reach without sacrificing in another regard.
Yeah. So my second sleeper, this is one that I've actually heard no one talk about. Stonecoil Serpent.
Yes. The affinity card, perhaps.
Yeah, so it's X for a 0/0 reach, trample, protection from multicolored. And it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So on its face, it is an Endless One. And Endless One was a X 0/0 Eldrazi from Battle for Zendikar.
Yeah, Battle for Zendikar.
Battle for Zendikar that came in with X +1/+1 counters on it. So it's just that with almost all upside. It's not an Eldrazi.
Yeah, it's not an Eldrazi. It's pretty big when you have stuff like Eldrazi Temple. But yes, I understand your point.
But being an artifact is also, in its way, very broken.
Yeah, and having counters like Hardened Scales Affinity. I'm not sure if this will see play in that deck, but like it feels like it could. You know?
It's got potential. But that clause, protection from multicolored, I think is a slam dunk sideboard card, right? At the very least.
I think it depends the way Standard breaks down, right? Like it's definitely like one of those options, you know? Or like I remember when D-Spark came out where I'm like, this card's really solid, but I don't know where exactly it's going to see play. But like now that's D-Spark, now like Standard's kind of shaken out. It's like, okay, D-Spark's really good against the Wilderness decks. It's really good against like some of the bigger Teferi decks. It's pretty good against it's really good against the ramp decks. So like, I don't know what Standard's going to look like, but like having this option is very strong.
Yeah, I see it as a nice thing that it can't be targeted by Teferi.
You cannot.
It can't be targeted by Oko. It can't be targeted by a good amount of just removal that people play.
Yeah.
Because there's still plenty of Ravnica cards kicking around. And because of all those little edge cases, Reach Trample, not bad either. Like, if you just play it as a 2/2 or a 3/3, it's probably going to eat up most of the small flyers that people play. And there's very little opportunity cost on this, right? It's just it fills in whatever spot in the curve you need it to fill in. It synergizes with Ugin if you want to do that.
Oh yeah, I forgot Ugin was a card that existed. Yeah,
and he has a static.
He does have a static. Who would have thought? Yeah, that's funny.
It synergizes with Our Lady of the Lake.
It does. It's actually quite good.
You can just keep bringing back this XX every turn, which seems strong. So I think that's a card that it's got a chance. It seems like a very low opportunity cost, very innocuous card, and it will probably only have its moment in the sun for a hot second because I anticipate that once monocolor gets even more entrenched when Theros comes out, that last clause will be
not as
much
good.
less relevant.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We got like with Guilds of Ravnica multicolor set followed right up with like the Eldraine Theros, which feels going to be very monocolored. Kind of interesting.
They did last time. Ravnica came back. They followed up with Theros.
They did do that. That is true. It's also actually it's kind of interesting you brought up with the Oko situation where it's like I actually might be on Nambo because like plus an Oko on this thing, you just get to keep all the counters and get like a 5/5 if you play it on 2.
You can't do it with your own Oko, unfortunately.
Yeah, you can't plus on your own. But yeah, I think definitely potential as a sideboard card. Depends on the way Standard shakes out. There's like a lot of like multicolor aggressors, and this guy just like gets in front and prevents them from all killing you. I think that would be really good. Or if there's a lot of multicolor defensive creatures, and you can just use this guy to get past them, or like fairies everywhere, or that 5-color Div Mizzet deck somehow comes together. So lots of ways it could see play for sure.
So let's turn our attention real quick to Modern. I think we've talked a little bit about some of the most obvious Modern plans, but I think we have somehow not talked about the most obvious, most overpowered card for Modern. It might be Emery, actually.
I think Emery's
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Talk about her again. Emery's very close. If she's not it, then it is this card, Once Upon a Time.
Ah, yes, the fairy tale begins.
Kyle, what does Once Upon a Time do?
So it costs 2 mana, like
Does it?
kinda, sorta.
Does it?
Not really. No, it really doesn't. But it has 1 in the green at the top right corner of the card. So
Yeah,
we'll talk about it
does
anyway
say that.
for an instant. And it is the first spell you've cast this game. So this is the first thing you're doing. Very flavorful. Once upon a time. Then you can not pay the 1 in the green in its top right corner. So you play it for free. And then the effect is you look at the top 5 cards of your library, and you may reveal a creature or land card from those 5 and put that card into your hand. The rest go in the bottom in a random order. So yeah, free card, 0 mana card selection. Seems decent. Could be worse.
It's 0 mana card selection, and it's the first spell you've cast this game, so you don't have to commit to it on turn 0. You can just cast it on your first turn if you want to. If you play a land and pass, you can play it on your second turn. So you can just time it if you want to, which is super nice if, say, you were playing Arclight Phoenix.
Oh, wow.
You can go Once Upon a Time, then let's say, for example, where's the red card?
The Tormenting Voice. It's not Tormenting Voice.
No, because that takes 2 mana. You can go Merchant of the Veil, which has an adventure. Haggle. For 1 red, you may discard a card if you do draw a card.
So new Faithless Looting, right?
So you can go Haggle Opt plus Once Upon a Time, and you've got a turn 2 Arclight Phoenix. That might be too much work, but I've definitely played Arclight Phoenix decks where the first 2 turns were tapped lands.
Yeah.
That totally happens. And the fact that this card just lets you trigger whenever you want to do the instant part of it, like you can do it on your opponent's turn in response to something if you want to. You can do it on your turn, on your second turn, first turn, third turn, who cares? It thins your deck functionally. Like you're definitely getting whichever land or creature. As long as you've got enough hits in your deck, it will almost never whiff.
Yeah.
It just lets you sculpt your hand. It gives you whatever you need. If you don't have the lands, you get a land. If you don't have the creatures, you get a creature.
Yeah, if you're playing a green creature-based deck in Standard, you are hard-pressed to find a reason not to play this card, I think, for sure. And in Modern, it's just like Tron has shown us that paying 1 mana to look at the top 5 for a card that you want is a strong effect in Ancient Stirrings. So I'd have to imagine it's 0 mana. It's pretty good. It's interesting, though, because, I don't know if this – I'm sure this is probably good in Drawn, but, I don't know what I'm cutting because I don't play nearly enough Tron. Probably have to leave that to the Tron guys. But more consistency to Tron. Oh, but Neoform, that's the big deck this is going to help.
A Neoform Elf combo?
Yeah, that deck does not play a lot of lands. It does not, and it plays a few creatures it wants to hit. So this card seems perfect for that kind of deck.
Yeah, and I'm not joking. If Arclight Phoenix is going to survive to see more play, this card doesn't care about what colors your deck is. You just want to have a concentration of lands and creatures, which is trivial. So if you want access to finding one of those things for an early turn degenerate combo, even finding Emery in an artifact-based deck, that's not that hard. There's just so many degenerate things that this card is capable of. Now, the downside of it is it's an impulse for creatures and lands on its face.
It digs deeper, though. It's 5 instead of 4, so it's not even that bad.
Oh, yeah. It's not even that bad, but you really need your deck to want to find lands and creatures, which some decks don't. So
agreed.
That's the only restriction on it, really.
No, I'd say it's a meaningful restriction. Not definitely not a deal breaker, but card's very strong. There's a lot of, that's the thing with this set. There's a lot of strong cards in this set. Things we just didn't, there's so much we just didn't talk about. And that's really, really strong. And it's definitely a C-plane Standard, but back to this card, it's just you gotta be playing, if you play creatures and lands, this card's gonna find you exactly what you want, or it's gonna make if you are looking for a specific thing, you're gonna be able to find that specific thing a lot more often because of this card. And that could be really good. So.
And I think for Modern, I think Wishclaw Talisman is in the ballpark.
Yeah, Wishclaw's I feel if I see the deck, then we'll see it. But I don't know. I'm not gonna assume
You're not gonna be the one to find it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be the guy who says I know where Wishclaw Talisman fits in Modern. I'll let the Brewers figure that out, and if it's really good, maybe I'll pick it up. I'll stay on the sidelines though. We talked a little bit of Drown and Lock. Obviously, that card's pretty good for Modern too. I don't know. Is there anything else we are missing here?
Well, Witchclaw Talon, let me just read it. It's
Oh,
one
for sure,
colorless,
for
one
sure.
black for a artifact. It enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it. You can pay 1, tap it, remove a wish counter from the Witchclaw Talisman, search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. An opponent gains control of Witchclaw Talisman. Activate this ability only during your turn. So Witchclaw Talisman, I mean, just an obvious application. Turn 2, Witchclaw Talisman. Turn 3, activate it and find a Karn, and then just lock your opponent down.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. It's just like, also with the good old Teferi, you can activate it, get your Teferi, then use Teferi to put it back in your hand and draw a card. Not terrible. So,
There are a ton of degenerate uses for it, and I think the fair usage isn't even bad.
no, it's
Just
not.
Monkey's Paw.
Monkey's
If you just get to 3 times search your deck for any card, like, they don't print that at this cost ever.
They do not.
I think it's for a good reason. And even if your opponent gets 1 look as well, you get 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, even on rate, if you trade it back, I think you come out ahead. So it seems good on its fair rate, and then there are a bunch of ways to make it unfair.
Yeah, I agree. Like, Cruel Tutor has seen play in Legacy, which is black, 1, get a card from your deck, put in your hand, you lose 3. That has seen Legacy play, believe it or not. So this card, I don't know, if you want to tutor through your deck, like, and you're not, like, it's another option that's there. I'm not saying it's the best thing, but it's definitely a thing you can be doing. So, not out of the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't see any others that we haven't already discussed.
Yeah, there's one more that I almost forgot about, but happy I did not. Hushbringer. So, good old modern card. I'm definitely going to be adding to the sideboard of my blue-white control deck for sure. So it's a 1 colorless and 1 white for a 1/2 flying lifelink. Creatures entering the battlefield or dying don't cause abilities to trigger. So this is kind of like a turbocharged Tocatli Honor Guard, which was already almost good enough. But like the amount of stuff that ETBs and does something stupid right now in standard or in modern is at an all-time high, I would argue. So having a card like this that doesn't get force negation is a big deal. So excellent sideboard card. I am sure to play it. It's going to be also Soul Herder was one of my worst matchups with blue-white in modern. So this card is a very clean answer to Soul Herder, which makes me happy. So, happy to have it.
Its art upsets me.
Its art upsets me too, but I'm just looking at the text, You're just like, don't need to look at that.
I didn't mind the lips in the background. I really don't like the ring of lips.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. The art's kind of what. Yeah, hopefully I just get shiny enough that you can't even see the art.
Why does it have a hula hoop of lips?
I don't know. It doesn't like lips, or it likes lips a lot, I guess.
It likes lips too much.
Likes lips a lot, way too much. But it is definitely. But as a card, forget the art. Also, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. And then there's also Witch's Vengeance. I think is like a little pass. It might get there in modern. So it's 1 black creatures. You choose a creature type, and those creatures get -3/- until end of turn. But maybe not because of Plague Engineer. But we'll see. It's definitely considerable.
Yep, I think that those are both definitely going to see at least some play in modern.
No, I personally know I'm going to be playing Hushbringer, but Witch's Vengeance maybe.
That doesn't count. If you're going to make it happen, then
I'll make it happen. I've been playing. Blue-white has treated me well, so I'm always happy to see when they give blue-white more really good cards. So, yeah, I think that does it though. Maybe there's something we're missing, but I don't think anything crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sideboard cards, like the cycle of sideboard cards,
oh, for sure,
potentially see play.
Yeah.
There's the stuff that are just rate monsters.
Yep. Yeah, of course, for sure.
And a card that I think will see play that I don't think anyone's talking about, at least in standard, is Embereth Shieldbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 1 red, destroy target artifact, and then 1 and a red for a 2/1. Like being able to play in a night deck, a main deckable piece of artifact destruction, when we've already talked about all of these different artifacts that needs to die.
Yeah, Tin Street Hooligan sees play or I guess that's only 2 mana, but yeah, no, the effect is good. The effect is definitely good, but it's a Maniac Vandal, basically. Except you can pay for as a 2/1, so it's a little better than Maniac Vandal.
Yeah, it's what is the Shatter, the 1 mana Shatter?
Oh, I think that is Shatter, right? Or no, it's not Shatter.
Too.
Smelt.
It's smelt on the front half, and then it's got a back half at all. It does anything.
It does a thing. That's all you want out of your destroy target artifact card, really. So yeah, I could see if artifacts become prevalent and the Knights deck is good, I think that's a solid sideboard card for sure. So
totally. And sleeper, Golden Egg.
Oh yeah, I think it's a solid filler card. We have like this. What is it? The other one, the Guild Globe or whatever. So Golden Egg's probably better than Guild Globe, but they're comparable, right?
Yeah, 2 mana. It draws a card when it enters instead of when cracking, which most eggs do not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that are 2 mana. So that's, I think, noticeably good. And degenerate artifact-based combo decks that use just dumb artifacts that come in and draw cards come up all the time.
Yeah,
so.
It also is the subtype food. So if you're doing like a food deck thing, this is a solid like way to make a piece of food. 2 mana, make a food, draw a card. Could be worse.
That and Gingerbread's the best.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite cards. Artifact creature food golem.
Yeah,
it's so good.
No, when it first came out, I thought that food was a creature type, so that all the changelings were also food. But sadly, that is not the case. Food is a artifact type, which kind of got wrecked there. So yeah, got wrecked. I would have done it. Like played like some feasting troll kings in modern, and like sack all my changelings. It would have been really bad, but would have been cool.
Definitely would have been cool.
Like turn Morphon into a big old snack.
Yes. He's a snack right now, but a different kind of snack.
Yeah, a different kind of snack.
So I think that covers all of the cards that I think will definitely see play in Modern and Standard. Well, not
Standard. There's way too much to talk. We'd be here for hours if we talked about every card in the set.
Stormfist Crusader, like almost.
Yeah.
At least half the set could see some Standard play.
Yeah, like Lovestruck Beast, the Knight. Yeah, the Acclaimed Contender. Yeah, we could go on.
Yorvo.
Yeah. Those
Wildborn Preserver. There's so many.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Far too many. Like this set, well, we just leave it at this set's very good for Standard. There's a lot to do. Not sure where the right way to go with it is, but there's a lot of potential in a lot of different places. So get to brewing, and you can do it for free on Arena now for 12 games. And so they give you all the cards. So just jump right on.
And I think that while there are a lot of 2-for-1s in this set, and I tend to shy away from designs that are just like value upon value upon value, I like this style where you have to be able to use the adventure half to get the full value, more than the designs with Planeswalkers from War of the Spark, where you just kind of play it, and if your opponent doesn't interact with it, they just will eventually lose. And then if they try to interact, you just get them. I prefer games that are less snowbally, and this set does not seem to be as snowbally. There's a lot of interaction you can put in your deck that will not just get you burned. Like you can play a card in your deck that is a shock and also a 4/3. So if your opponent's playing Teferis and stuff like that, you've got extra value. And if your opponent is playing creatures, you can interact with them. And if your opponent's not playing creatures, you could just play a creature and it's fine. Like, you've got a lot of options to be in the game and involved in the game and playing, instead of, oops, my opponent's deck just doesn't align with mine, and now I can't. Oh, I'm dead. Help.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot less snowballing, because it's just like you only get in the top end, you only get 2 cards, which because I think they did a good job balancing most of the adventures. Maybe we'll find out that one of them's way too good, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
It's probably one of the white blue ones because of Teferi, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a fun time, doesn't it? Now.
That's the. But ultimately, the problem is Teferi and not the adventures. I think the adventures are great design. The fact that there's this single card that just makes everything all warped and bad. It's not their fault.
Yeah, Teferi is a little too good in hindsight. Like, I'm like probably the biggest Teferi fan out there, but even I'll admit Teferi is probably too good. So,
right. So I think that covers it for Throne of Eldraine. Thank you once again, Kyle. And a reminder, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/deeplistens, where you can gain access to our Discord and help us support this show and keep it running. So thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gino. Fun as always.
Great. Until next time, peace.